Suspect has complied.
Don't shoot!
Open it. Go when ready.
Copy, boss. Suspect spotted.
Now.
No mercy!
Move it! Go! 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 Clear so far. Continuing.
I'm clear.
This was supposed to be the review of Elderborn. However, certain developments made me reconsider that choice for now. What kinds of developments? Let's just say that attempting career suicide is kinky and all, but sometimes turning the attempt into reality might not be a good idea. SWAT 4 is a first-person #ACAB All Cats Are Beautiful simulator, developed by Irrational Games, published by Sierra in 2005. In this game, you assume the role of an unnamed lead of a SWAT team, a fresh transfer from the dreaded LA war zone, to pick up the leash of a pack of seasoned entry team members. Reynolds, Girard, Fields, and Pollock. Sadly, your job isn't easy. For each 12 streamers who have to be shot for the crime of missing Tonator's funny message, and 7 ever so tan kids brutalized for the sin of sharing the same hemisphere. There is one actual reason for the funding of your department not being cut. Worse still, for some reason, you are the one that gets all the shitty assignments. Isn't the life of an FNG awful? At least there are the elderly to season with pepper spray, and dogs too. There's no dogs. Immersion ruined. You had one job, Irrational Games, and you missed the vital aspect of the life of the SWAT officer, putting down family pets in the act of literal shotgun colostomy. Literally unplayable. And true, there is a mission in a Chinese restaurant, but I don't think that counts. All jokes aside, the game is still highly regarded, as far as I am aware, for a reason even today. Let's delve into why that's the case, shall we? But before we do, we need to look into making this game, playable. As a game from 2005, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the game was expected to run in 4:3 resolutions. Which kind of isn't really the case anymore. For reference, I play the GOG copy. As much as it runs out of the box, you cannot change the FOV, nor can you run it in 1080p. The biggest resolution available is 1600 by 1200. Looking for solutions, you might encounter a lot of GOG threads. The easiest to find suggests modifying a certain config file and then make it read-only. It's a serviceable way of doing this as far as I recall, but all in all annoying as it doesn't allow you to change any settings further. Not making it read-only, on the other hand, will result in overriding our changes. I did remember there was another way, although I couldn't find the source this time. That said, I actually managed to reconstruct the steps from memory. Here they go. Open this file, find one of the lines starting with screen resolution choices, duplicate it and change the values to desired resolution. It was 1920 by 1080 in my case. Save. Done! You can now select your desired resolution without fighting against the engine. That said, I never felt the need to modify VFOV, so if that's a problem, you might need to do a search or two to fix it yourself. Now, we can properly discuss our police brutality simulator. SWAT 4 is a game that leans heavily on realism in its art style. Nowadays the character models and some textures might be laughable, but at the time, I could only name a single title that looked better than SWAT 4. Geometry Wars Retro Evolved. Nah, I'm fucking with you, I mean Fear of course. Editing Schwalbe here. I actually looked up the list of games released in 2005 proper, and I've realized that year had seen the releases of COD 2, Half-Life 2 and Doom 3, especially the latter two being graphical powerhouses. That said, and I can already see all neck-bearded fat tossers rushing at me with crowbars only to die of heart attack after 2 impotent swings, I still think SWAT 4 was one of the better looking games released that year. There is a certain degree of similarity between both Fear and SWAT 4. I was thinking many minutes, and I think I know why. What both games have in common is how grungy everything looks, grungy and moody. However, while Fear mastered the lighting, I feel that SWAT 4 mastered the environments. While the former retains a certain constant with its grounded office buildings and warehouses, the latter sports a variety of urban environments. Some of them can be bland and basic, but some?
You gotta move away from there.
Yes, some of them stick with you. I still remember the box blurb talking about taking inspiration from the movie 7 in its atmosphere. And you know what? Years later, I have to agree. It's not always apparent, but the DNA is there. As a matter of fact, I think that the hit-and-miss nature of environments, at least when it comes to memorability, actually helps emphasizing what stands out. And sure, brightly lit offices are still bland and samey, but man, when the Enviro artists go out, they go out to paint the fucking town red. Character models are...
Do it! Come on, kill me!
Do it!
Do it now!
Come on, kill me!
Come on, kill me!
There's been better. Some civilians especially can look like rubber dolls or some shit. The animations, however, are convincing enough to help you get more immersed into hostage situations you are supposed to solve. Holy shit, the more I put the topic under scrutiny, the more impressed I am. True, you start to notice that visuals are lacking. At the same time, the fact how imperfect they actually are make it the more impressive. Okay, that sounded fittingly psychotic, let me explain. This game can be very immersive. When moving through places, you don't focus on how detailed a corrugated sheet of metal is. You can't afford that. You quickly learn to focus on doors, obstacles, contacts, be it civilian or hostile, but most importantly, to be on your toes at all times. One could think that's something that would allow the art direction a degree of breathing room. And that is true. But instead of cutting down on the work to go out drinking earlier, someone decided to fill the areas with detail. Not necessarily a high-res detail, sometimes it's not even something worth noticing at all. It's simply a visual background noise. And as a result, that creates an impression of places that would actually exist, one way or another occupied by human beings. That's fucking impressive. I've also mentioned fear as a prime cut when it comes to impressive lighting and how it reinforces the mood. What needs to be said, SWAT 4 is no slouch in this department either. The lighting is oftentimes used masterfully, especially in the missions with more sinister context. You can see stark contrasts created by lighting through color, shapes, you name it. And all that is basically achieved with a smart use of purely static lighting, which is another argument towards the old chestnut of limitation breeding creativity. Is the audio this good as well? The audio overall consistently holds high level of quality when it comes to production and direction. It does have its moments though. Guns sound appropriately, along with the rest of your equipment. Special mention goes to grenades, both stingers and flashbangs. Their explosions are convincing and punchy. The only thing that niggles me are the flashbangs. Apparently in this universe those work on reverse roadside picnic rules. If you don't look at them, you will not lose your hearing. There's small things like this that annoy, however they touch upon gameplay. Voice work is especially well done. The acting is convincing and natural. Both suspects and hostages usually happen to have lines that fit the situation they find themselves in.
I never thought this could
Civilian
happen. All the
security.
security, the guards, the cameras, they still came crashing in here shooting like madmen. I mean, it was insane.
Safe, secure, and ready for evac.
Civilian restraint.
Roger that. Trailer standing by.
To work.
Don't make any...
And members of your squad often chime in with their own observations and thoughts on the matter.
This place is giving me the creeps.
Roger, on our way.
Unlock this mission's going sideways.
All set. Door jam.
Cake, anyone?
I'm not touching that shit.
That said, all four stooges running around with you sound very similar, even though they do have different voice actors. I don't know what's up with that, but I can't really tell who says what exactly until they identify themselves. Or you could turn the subtitles on.
Entry team to talk. Civilian is okay. Ready.
I don't think you should rely on them. There is some strangeness. For example, each time you go into... How the fuck do I even call this screen? Let's call it the pause screen, I mean, it does pause the damned thing. Anyway, bringing up pause screen naturally pauses everything, which means pausing all the audio as well, which is Logical, I guess? But the way it's implemented creates this sudden, harsh silence. Even worse, when you return to game and, reindeer forbid, you are in the middle of action, all audio will immediately slap your ears like a fucking sledgehammer.
Hey, you. Finally awake. Shut the fuck up!
This leads us neatly to the topic of music, which is, serviceable?
Yes, sir.
No, I mean it works. There isn't much to speak about, really. It exists in the background. Some tracks are more subdued, while the action tracks work their magic when all hell breaks loose.
Drop your weapons! Get down!
Damn,
Contact has complied.
In the end, however, if you'd ask me to hum a tune from SWAT OST, I would fail. It's not a bad soundtrack, mind you. I could call it forgettable, and it is, but it doesn't need to be a bad thing. I mean, for fuck's sake, have you ever heard The Shags? This is where I would troll you by having you listen to what I consider probably the worst song I've ever heard. But YouTube claimed that track. So, yeah. The music of SWAT 4 serves its purpose of creating an atmosphere of urban warfare, sometimes subsiding to create tension, sometimes wailing dissonantly to emphasize more of the haunting findings. But besides that, it's bland and inoffensive. And here comes the miniature plot twist of this section. This was the best decision they could have made. SWAT 4 gets fucking intense and demands your entire attention and then some. If you had music with actual melody to pull players' attention away from his current assignment, he'd be fucked. With all the chaos that ensues, player must be able to focus and identify threats in a split second at times. Thus, the less distractions, the better. Seeing how I've mentioned it, let's move on to the gameplay. The game is separated into a set of self-contained assignments. Each mission has objectives that must be completed. Briefing allows you to study the situation to a degree, presenting you with the background from which you can deduce what to expect. You will be presented with what is known about the layout and the aforementioned choice of entry, but
Holy Jesus! What is that? What the fuck is that?
let's just say that layout maps aren't something you will rely on. One of the more important information you can gather from the briefing, other than your objectives, is what to expect from your suspects. Perhaps they are well organized and armed, in which case good fucking luck using CS gas when perps run around in gas masks. Once you've studied the situation and the layout, choose the gear for you and your men, and deploy at the entry point of your choosing. There are two base objectives in each mission: rescue hostages and bring order to chaos, both completed by zip-tying civilians and neutralizing suspects respectively. Why yes, I am here to rescue you, dearie. Now sit here, zip-tied, 2 meters away from this fat fuck of a serial-killing kidnapper. As a member of law enforcement, you are expected to arrest suspects. Furthermore, you have to adhere to certain rules of engagement. Each and every suspect must be given a chance to surrender. If he fails to do so, this is your authorization to use lethal force. In self-defense, of course. In order to do so, player is given a range of tools to obtain advantage. C2 charges and breaching shotguns for loud entry, an array of non-lethal grenades to introduce further element of surprise and confusion into the system, pepper sprays and tasers for anyone who refuses to acknowledge you
Whose side are you on anyway?
are the good guy, and more. There's even 2 primary weapons out of the bunch that are meant to be purely for non-lethal approach: less than lethal shotgun, firing rubber beanbags, and pepper ball, like a paintball gun, but spicier. Personally, first few missions I approach with less than lethal shotguns across the board. One shot at close range is usually enough to stun the armed suspect, and more often than not making him surrender. Unfortunately, pepper ball is less reliable in forcing suspects to surrender. They are, however, 100% safe. Sadly, non-lethal approach becomes less and less viable very fast. Schwalbe, why the fuck would anyone bother with non-lethal approach or rules of engagement? Okay, allow me to present to you the difficulty selection. What it changes is the minimum score required to actually pass the mission and unlock the next. And guess what? Non-lethal approach is the only way to gain maximum score of 100. For example, the highest elite difficulty requires a minimum of 95. Incapacitating suspects yields less points, killing them less still, even if the rules allowed you to use lethal force. If they didn't, you're going to flat out have the points removed on top of everything.
They fucking asked for it!
There is no mid-mission saving in this game. Moreover, each attempt at the entry is randomized to a degree. Positions and numbers of both suspects and civilians may vary. That and the stingy nature of scoring already makes for a decent challenge if you play on any difficulty above easy. And then you factor in the overall difficulty of the gameplay. Careless engagements will result in injuries and incapacitation. You can go from being fine to dropping down within a second flat, same with your men. Each room, or sequence of rooms, is in this regard like a puzzle. You need to know the number and the positions of suspects, but also if there are any civilians mixed in. You do not want them to be caught in the crossfire. You are American SWAT. You are not V-Ration Alpha. Hey, maybe that's why there is no mission taking place in a Fiat. Something as mundane as doors is also critical. Suspects may decide to make a run for it, and you really do not want to play cat and mouse with them. Generally, getting surprised in this game means getting absolutely fucked, no matter which side you are on.
Surprise, motherfucker!
This is where two crucial tools come in, wedges and Opti-Wand. Wedges allow you to block the doors, effectively cutting out the way in or out for anyone. It's helpful for isolating the suspects, but also saving yourself a headache by not letting some cunt flap surprise you with a 762 buttsucks. Opti-Wand lets you peek under the doors and around the corners. Very useful, as otherwise you'd have no idea what's behind them most of the time. It still does have its limits, depending largely on the layout of the room you look into.
Butt sauce.
It can also be very dangerous to use if you try to mirror corners, because AI of your squad mates sometimes derp into the view of whomever you were checking for. I should probably talk about your squad, huh? Okay, so we have 4 stooges with you. 2 designated teams of 2, dubbed red and blue.
Appreciate.
As a lead, you have an access to command menu, with options fitting the context depending on what you are pointing at and what your guys are equipped with. You can give an order to the entire entry team, designated gold, or to red or blue specifically. The latter is very useful when you need to be fast with wedging or mirroring multiple doors. In theory, you can use this mechanic with the fact that you have access to live feed from the perspectives of your men to stage the assaults from 2 different angles, but
Red, get in there and clear. Blue team, open and clear. Go when ready.
Placing a charge. Be ready.
Get down! Hands in the air! Get back! So far, so good.
I'm either missing something, or you need some real good practice to pull off synchronization that won't result in misery. The team does a good enough job of stocking up the doorways. You will see them taking positions depending on the door hinges and space, which is very much in line with how it would work in real life. That said, they do tend to screw up. Actually, very often do I see situations where I give my team an order, only for them to ignore it completely or partially, forcing me to repeat the order. You don't lose the mission if your team members are incapacitated. What you do lose, however, is the access to whatever gear they had left on them. You start with the limited number of supplies. If the guy with 3 wedges goes down, well, you are 3 wedges short from now on, get bent scrub. Injuries also harshly impact the performance of you and your team. Leg injuries slows your already very slow movement speed, while arm injuries make for an even more difficult time controlling the recoil of your weaponry. Overall, the gameplay has this trial and error nature. Sure, it makes for some good replayability, but can potentially be frustrating when you are one perp away from success, only for the aforementioned to zone you out. Or for your full metal jacket rounds to penetrate the target and accidentally kill a civilian in Bruges style. But all those ideas mixed together make for a good action puzzle game, no matter how weird that sounds. Beating a mission with 100 out of 100 or close is a very satisfying feeling, as it requires planning and meticulous execution. That is, until you hit the A-bomb.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
A-bomb is the first mission that will be pure suffering. Fucking Marky the Sad would play this shit and conclude, yeah, that's going a bit overboard. The layout is very complex, as it's a concert venue come gangbanger hoedown. A lot of open spaces, corners, doors, you hate it, you name it, it's here. Well, okay, perhaps that was a bit of a stretch. Bring wedges and silenced MP5s to lessen the pain, if even just a little. Expect a lot of runners with no way of preventing them from doing so reliably. Seriously, fuck this mission. A-bomb is the first mission in the game that I am 100% certain I cannot reliably pull off without lethal means. And trust me, I've tried in the past. For the reviewing playthrough though? Yeah, I couldn't be asked. The further you go, the more the challenge ramps up. Sometimes to an unreasonable fucking degree. If any of you can pull off any of those past A-bomb on elite difficulty, do let me know. No, I am not looking this shit up myself. If I needed a reason to drink, I'd simply look into the mirror. SWAT 4 is unflinchingly, brutally unforgiving. It can also be really, really satisfying. Its control scheme definitely aged as well as its visual side, if you put it under scrutiny, that is. But the environments and gameplay loops are exceptional, especially if you get the chubby from everything going according to plan. And I will say this once again, the atmosphere of some of the missions is thick, superb, and so well done. I'm going to give SWAT 4 a cautious recommendation, at least when it comes to single player. It's a game that does a lot of things really well, but it has its flaws and can be very frustrating at times. However, those of you who are as much a dinosaur as I am might remember that the game does have a co-op component. It is evidenced, for example, by Soviet Womble's videos that I wholeheartedly recommend. Not that he needs recommendation, I mean, look at his sub count, for crying out loud. Sure, his bullshitteries follow the usual shtick, but he also made one video of him and Cyanide going through the Fairfax residence, which I would personally consider the high point of the game, and let's just say, it's played straight like a ruler for a reason. So, how come I don't talk about it? Is it because I have no friends? It might come as a surprise to your fetal alcoholism-addled mind, but I do. It's just we failed to make the co-op work for years now. Even using Game Ranger, which is humiliating, given the fact that the guys who tried to pull it off are two sodding software engineers on senior positions or equivalent. Your mileage may vary, of course. Maybe I just need a good step-by-step instruction on how to do it. I don't fucking know. I've spent 6 fucking years wearing my spine to the dust, working my ass off 15 See you next time. It will be either Arnold posting or Adventures of them Bloody Magpies.